Wow, it's me, the Bi Book Boy. Those of you who follow my channel know that I am back from Montana, which means I have made the pilgrimage and brought home with me the prize possessions, my Wonder Woman comic books. This is just one of many of my Wonder Woman t-shirts. They will all be showcased at some point on this channel, and it makes me very happy. Those of you who follow this channel know that I talk about two gateway drugs of mine that got me into reading. Number one, thrillers with my mother. Number two, Wonder Woman comic book. Now, I have referenced this many times, but I have never once talked about my favorite Wonder Woman comic books of the ages until now. But first, if you're new here, my name is Logan, and I'm the Bi Book Boy. I'm a chaotic bisexual. I read books. This week, I specifically read comic books. Let's dive in. Before we get into the specifics, I want to do a brief history of Wonder Woman just so that we're all on the same page. Wonder Woman was created in the 1940s. She is Princess Diana of Themyscira. She is the princess of the Amazon race. Wonder Woman is the daughter of Queen Hippolyta, who is the queen of the Amazon race, a race of... Oh no, what's the word? They can't die. What's the word when you can't die? Immortal. Yes! The Amazons are a race of immortal warrior women that live on an island called Themyscira, also known as Paradise Island. Basically, Steve Trevor, an army pilot for the United States, crash lands on the shores of Themyscira, and there's a contest held to see who will be the Amazonian ambassador to the world of man and deliver him safely back home and represent the Amazonian morals of, or values of peace and equality and all of those cool fucking things. Diana, as the princess and the daughter of the queen, is forbid from entering the challenge, but she does anyway, and then she fucking wins because she's fucking badass, and it's great, and thus commences 70 years of comics in which we get multiple different storylines and multiple different retcons. Diana and Steve have a romance. Diana also befriends Etta Candy, who is Steve's secretary in the 40s, but is later retconned to be a general in the army, and it's badass as shit, and it's awesome. Yeah, all kinds of shit happened. In the late 70s and early 80s, DC Comics would run a company-wide story arc called Infinite Crisis. That's a lie, it was not called Infinite Crisis, it was called Crisis on Infinite Earths. Infinite Crisis is a later retcon that I will talk about later on in this video. Back to you, regular Logan. In which they would retcon a bunch of storylines that had gotten far too confusing because at that point, the comics were so convoluted that it was really hard for new readers to jump in and understand what the fuck was going on. And Wonder Woman was one of those that would be retconned, thus bringing me to my first group of favorites, the George Perez run. George Perez rebooted Wonder Woman in the 1980s to make her more accessible for young readers and restart her storyline and basically clean up her history. George Perez was the person that really brought the Greek gods to the forefront of the Wonder Woman mythology, and it's really, really cool. Instead of it being World War II when Wonder Woman enters the world of man, it is the 1980s and the Cold War. Steve and Etta become generals and lieutenants in the army, respectively. Therefore, Etta is no longer his inferior and is an equal, and it's really awesome. And Steve and Etta have a romance instead of Steve and Diana, which actually kind of works. I kind of like it when Diana and Steve are just friends. I don't know why. Anyway, like, the main thing is that, the main gist of it is that Ares is discovered to be behind the Cold War, and Diana is sent to man's world to not only deliver Steve safely home when he crash lands on Paradise Island, but to defeat Ares, and then eventually she serves as the Amazon ambassador to the UN, which is incredible. Once in the United States, Diana settles in with Vanessa and Julia Capitalis, a mother and daughter duo who live in Boston and are Diana's host family for a good portion of the 80s. Through this gloriousness, we get all of the wonderful 80s culture supplied through the teenage Vanessa, and it's wonderful, with lines such as, and I quote, "Who do you think I am, Mom? Madonna?" Oh my god, it's so good. Also, another favorite thing of mine about the 80s story arcs and George Perez art in general, the Greek gods are so hot. Why is Apollo such a daddy? Look, also, There's nothing more satisfying than watching Wonder Woman save Apollo. If you're coming to Wonder Woman comic books like freshly new with fresh eyes that have never read a Wonder Woman comic book, I highly recommend George Perez Volume 1 and Volume 2, or the Omnibus, the George Perez Omnibus, which is the collection of these 2 books, plus I think 1 more issue. I don't remember exactly. I don't know in that omnibus. But it's really great because it's literally her first year in America and in Man's World, so you get a fresh introduction of this is the origin story, this is how the Greek gods work, this is how the Amazons work. You get fresh introductions to all of her rogues gallery. You get Cheetah's backstory, you get Circe's backstory, you get the Silver Swan. It's like a really nice gateway drug towards all of the wonderful things that are Wonder Woman comic books. Which brings me to my next one, the George Perez Wonder Woman Omnibus Volume 3. Omnibuses are gigantic collections of comic book story arcs. This is George Perez's third and last story arc of Wonder Woman. Afterwards, the character was passed on to another author. I highly recommend this one because the last half of it is the War of the Gods story arc, which changed a lot of things for DC history, and a lot of future Wonder Woman story arcs are based on the War of the Gods story arc. So it's really good, and it's really cool. Also, Dr. Psycho is involved. Basically, the War of the Gods story arc introduces the Amazons of Bana-Magdal, which are a different tribe of Amazons that chose to remain in Man's World and seek revenge for the enslavement of the Amazon race, rather than following the Amazons of Themyscira, who accepted the gift of this paradise island from the gods and chose to live isolated from men and live a life of peace. Basically, the evil witch Circe orchestrates a war between the Greek and Roman gods as to who are the true rulers of Olympus and the true gods. And this also pits the Amazons of Bana-Magdal against the Amazons of Themyscira. Also, it just pits the entire DC universe against each other because in the 80s, the DC universe really hinged on the existence of gods, and it was cool. And Wonder Woman is at the forefront of it because she is the ambassador of the Amazons and the gods to Man's World. Also, I just love a good Circe storyline. Circe is one of my favorite Wonder Woman villains. She's awesome. She's a badass bitch. One of my next favorite story arcs is The Challenge of Artemis from the 90s, written by William Messner Loebs. This storyline is really cool because it's in the portion of the 90s where Wonder Woman has been in Man's World for a while and she's super self-aware, and it gets really philosophical and I kind of love it. Basically, the gist is Queen Hippolyta Queen of the Amazons, mother of Diana, has been having nightmares that Wonder Woman is going to die. She's taken this as a warning of the gods, and she decides that the only way to protect her daughter is to hold a new competition and elect a new Wonder Woman. That way Wonder Woman dies, not Diana. Rather than being upfront and honest about this, she decides to take the perfect parenting routes and gaslights Diana instead, making Diana severely question whether she's been effective in Man's World at all. At this point, the Amazons of Bana-Magdal are also taking refuge on Paradise Island due to a bunch of crazy stuff that has happened in prior story arcs, and we will talk about it later. It is voted unfair to exclude the Amazons of Bana-Magdal from the competition, as the original competition that elected Wonder Woman as the ambassador towards the US only involved the Amazons of Themyscira. Competition happens. Diana loses to a champion from the Amazons of Bana-Magdal named Artemis. And thusly, we get Artemis walking around in the Wonder Woman costume, which means Wonder Woman is a redhead, and Diana becomes this incredible, angsty 90s biker chick. Look at biker chick Wonder Woman. Isn't that just, it's so good. I love a superhero in denim and leather. Don't know why. It's just so badass. Like, 90s Storm and 90s Wonder Woman are my favorite thing. And it's such a, like, it's not a phase mom type of attitude. Artemis and Diana return to the US. Artemis becomes the new Wonder Woman and is known for using far more violent tactics than Diana is, while Diana is now working as basically like an undercover, like a private investigator sort of thing, but with like superpowers. I don't know. She starts doing jobs for hire that which she would not have done when she was Wonder Woman, because it would have been against the Amazonian code. But she's no longer the Amazonian ambassador, so she can do whatever the hell she wants. Well, shit happens, and eventually Artemis gets entangled in a battle with the White Magician and Circe. Diana helps out. Circe actually is good for once, which is weird, and ends up saving them, saving the day, and Diana kills the White Magician, but not before the White Magician kills Artemis. Things that have me torn about this arc ever since I first read it. The 90s was a time of cheesecake, we will say. The art in this issue is beautifully drawn, very dramatic, but incredibly revealing. And the human body is a beautiful thing, and I think it's wonderful to celebrate it. However, basically what I'm saying is this specific story arc is definitely not for children. For instance, this panel is beautifully dramatic, but unnecessarily cheesecake filled. This is not for children. But also the men are drawn the same way. It's like, look at Heracles is a daddy in this run. We'll just say that, but also definitely not for children. And however, I really love the way that this story arc makes us question whether Wonder Woman's message of peace is actually effective in the US. And also, I love the repercussions that it has on later storylines, because after all is revealed and Wonder Woman, Diana retakes the mantle of Wonder Woman after Artemis dies, there's this rift that is formed between her and her mother, because her mother insinuated that she was not fit to be the ambassador and that she was failing and that she was no longer proud of her. And it creates for some great mother-daughter angst in later storylines, and I love it. Yes, I am in a different Wonder Woman shirt. Yes, I am in a different Wonder Woman mug. I am in a different Wonder Woman mug. I am in a mug, guys. Why do I have more than one shirt and mug? Because I'm obsessive. Anyway, next we come to the very special book, because it was my gateway Wonder Woman drug. Who is Wonder Woman? In the succeeding books that follow this storyline. I will link them all below. Anyway, although this specific Wonder Woman storyline and the storylines in the 2000s are not noted as some of the most well-written or beloved storylines in the history of Wonder Woman, I love them, and I think they are the perfect introduction to Wonder Woman. Reason being, this book this is the beginning of the Wonder Woman story arc after Infinite Crisis. So Crisis on Infinite Earths is the retcon that happened in the late 70s. There was another one called Infinite Crisis, in which they undid a lot of things that happened in Crisis, and a lot of characters were forced to do dark things. And at the end of that story arc, Wonder Woman kills a major figurehead in the DC Comics, in the DC comic world, Maxwell Lord. That panel of Wonder Woman that you probably have seen on the internet of her snapping Maxwell Lord's neck is the end of that storyline. And this storyline is the aftermath of that. Basically, it picks up as 1 year later, in order to deal with the fact that she can no longer serve as a figurehead of peace because she has killed a national figurehead. If I remember right, he wasn't president, but he was part of, like, the US government. Wonder Woman goes into hiding as her alter ego Diana Prince for a year, thusly giving the title of Wonder Woman and the duties therein to her younger sister, Donna Troy, who has an entire confusing backstory that I will also talk about probably in a later video, I guess. If you want a Donna Troy history, I can also do that. This book encompasses the storyline of when Wonder Woman a year later decides to take back the mantle from Donna. Basically, this book is a great way of showcasing all of the Wonder Woman villains in their, at the time, modern conceptions, and all of the Wonder Woman supporting characters except Steve, because, spoiler alert, because he's not around anymore, because Wonder Woman is immortal, Steve is not. He got old. Even though Batman doesn't get old? I don't know. Because you get literally, in one book, in a very well-written way, you get Wonder Woman, all of the Wonder Woman villains at some point, plus Donna Troy, who was the first Wonder Girl and is now serving Troya, and Cassie, the second Wonder Girl, and a bunch of other stuff. It's really great. It's a great thing. And it leads to the Love and Murder story arc, which is another one of my favorite, and the second Wonder Woman comic I ever bought, in which Evil Witch Circe plants basically resurrects Queen Hippolyta, who has been dead at the time. Have you been dead at the time? I'm so tired. Basically, the Evil Witch Circe resurrects Wonder Woman's mother and makes her believe that Wonder Woman is being held hostage by the US. Therefore, the Amazon nation wages a war against the United States. And it's awesome, because Wonder Woman has to choose sides, leading to the close of this story arc, Amazon's attack. I'm not going to give you spoilers, but it's great. It's awesome. Mother versus daughter, emotional and physical conflict, lots of politics. This then leads to the Gail Simone story arc, which I have read, have loved, sadly have not been able to buy yet, because unless you buy the Omnibus, it is out of print, and I have to save up for that Omnibus. I will forever recommend these 3 books as like starting points to the Wonder Woman mythos if you want to read any of it, because it's a great way to not have to start at the very beginning but still get a great understanding of everything. Which leads me to my final recommendations and favorite story arcs that I own, the Rebirth storylines. DC has recently gone through another reboot because they decided that 70 years of story arcs is just far too much for anybody to understand. In the late 2000s, the New 52 reboot happened, in which Flash turned back time. He screwed with time even though that he knew he shouldn't. It resulted in history being altered, and all of the superheroes had only been, all of the metahumans they call them now because we like science. All of the metahumans have only been active for 5 years, except Batman, who had been active for 10 years because they wanted to give him space for all of his multiple Robins. One of the major reboots that happened there was we found out that Diana's original origin of being formed from clay and given life by the gods was in fact a lie, and she was born of a secret illicit affair between Queen Hippolyta and Zeus himself. Thusly, she is a demigod. She goes on a bunch of adventures. She becomes the god of war. It's cool. It's great. Except for there's some interesting stuff that happens that makes it really confusing, and the Amazons get really scary, and it's just, and a lot of people really hated what happened to most of the characters in New 52, so DC decided to reboot it again, and we get Rebirth, in which the first title of Wonder Woman is called The Lies. Wonder Woman is basically now having memories of her pre-New 52 self mix in with her current self, and she doesn't know which is true, and she kind of starts losing it. It's really cool, because she starts turning to her friends to help her figure out what is true. We get awesome, badass warrior Wonder Woman in this, because the Rebirth Wonder Woman is not afraid of using deadly force, and she is a lot darker and grittier and more just Amazon Grecian warrior than peaceful ambassador, and it's awesome. Get a lot of beautiful retcons and wonderful representation. Firstly, Wonder Woman is confirmed bisexual in this, and it makes me so happy. Secondly, they retcon it so that Etta Candy, instead of being into Steve Trevor, has an affair with Barbara Minerva, the cheetah. That's right. Etta and Cheetah are lesbians, and it's amazing. That's another reason why Wonder Woman is one of my favorite, is because she is bisexual and she has a lot of representation, and it's great. Relationship between Cheetah and Wonder Woman is really deepened in this arc, in that one of the main retcons that happens is that Professor Barbara Ann Minerva, who is eventually then cursed to become the villain slash, I don't know, she's kind of a demigodish, the Cheetah, who is a murderous creature. Before that happened, she was an archaeologist. Oh, I just burped into the microphone. She was an archaeologist, and she is the person that in the Rebirth era teaches Wonder Woman about the ways of man's world, translates Wonder Woman's Themysciran dialect, teaches Wonder Woman English. Like this, they form a bond that is beautiful and inseparable and a very deep friendship. Thusly, when Barbara falls victim to the god Urs Kartaga and is transformed into his beast-like slave and cursed with a lust for human flesh and becomes the Cheetah, Diana takes it as her personal failing and her personal mission to get her friend back. And this makes for some incredible emotional storytelling. Oh my god, it's so good. Also, Rebirth is the story arc that is currently happening right now in DC Comics, so if you want to understand what's going on when you pick up a Rebirth storyline book, you should probably read these books. It's good, it's great. Also, since Etta is no longer a love interest for Steve, they return to the World War II storyline in which Diana and Steve are lovers. And while I do love Diana being in love with Hermes and Superman and all that fun stuff, there's just something about Diana and Steve that just makes my heart pump. She is the Superman to his Lois Lane. And it's just such a cool reversal of roles, and I love it, and that's really it. So yeah, those are my favorite Wonder Woman story arcs that I own. Those are not all of the Wonder Woman story arcs that I own, and those are not even close to all of the story arcs I have read. I just don't own all of them because a lot of them are out of print, and the only way that I was able to get my hands on them is through the grace of libraries. That's all I got for you today. If you want me to do a part 2 of this video, or perhaps do a deep dive on a different superhero, I gotcha, because comic books are books too. And if you enjoyed this video and want semi-regular chaotic bisexual content, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you can get my videos whenever I decide to post them. What's your favorite Wonder Woman story arc? What's your favorite comic book character? Do you have opinions on the way that the 90s art was drawn? Hit me up in the comments below. Let's talk about it, guys. As my boyfriend can attest, I can talk about Wonder Woman for days on end. This has been the Bye Book Boy, and I'm saying bye.